What if the end of the world wasn't loud, but silent? What if survival meant more than fighting monsters? It meant facing yourself. In 2025, post-apocalyptic and zombie films take a bold new turn. From haunted cities to snowy forests, from Nazi undead to emotional breakdowns, these new releases go far beyond blood and guts. They explore fear, loneliness, and the fight to stay human. And trust me, the final movie on this list is an absolute banger. Stay with us until the end. You won't want to miss it. After Impact. What would you do if you woke up in a world after a global catastrophe, alone, injured, and with no guarantee that anyone was still alive? After Impact from 2025 is an intimate, emotional journey through a post-apocalyptic landscape. Ethan, a young man, miraculously avoids death and ends up in his family's bunker, where he tries to regain his strength and the meaning of life. The world outside is ruined, and loneliness begins to consume him. However, an unexpected light appears in this darkness, someone with whom to share silence and fear. This film does not rely on big explosions or special effects, but on human emotions, silence, and the need for closeness. After Impact shows that survival is not only a struggle against conditions, but most of all against oneself. It is a story of hope and loneliness that stays with the viewer long after the screening. Perfect for those who appreciate intimate, deep post-apo with heart. BOS. Imagine living alone in a post-nuclear annihilation world for 4 years, convinced that you are the last man on Earth. Such is the life of Heinrich, the protagonist of the 2025 South African film BOS. His daily life is silence, forest, and survival, until the day he meets Em. The woman doesn't say a word, but her presence changes everything. A subtle bond begins to emerge between the two, almost fairy tale-like, as if the world is once again trying to start over. But this new Eden is not safe. Soon a group of other survivors arrives on their doorstep, and with them comes violence, danger, and a choice: defend the peace or flee. BOS is not only a post-apocalyptic story, but also a tale of nature, loneliness, and how much a person needs another human being. The cinematography is mesmerizing, the emotions real, and the message stays with the viewer for a long time. Home, sweet home. Rebirth. What if the end of the world comes not from the sky, but from the very heart of darkness? Home, sweet home. Rebirth is a post-apocalyptic horror film in which it is not contamination, but ancient spirits that sow destruction. The story is set in a world after a mysterious catastrophe, where the line between reality and the hereafter has completely blurred. Bangkok turns into a haunted city where evil powers take over and people live in constant fear. American policeman Jake arrives with his family to relax, but his vacation quickly turns into hell. When his loved ones disappear, he is forced to face his own fears and ancient rituals. Together with a mysterious monk, he travels through the ghostly world of the Hindrance to reclaim what is most precious to him. This is a story of survival in a reality where the apocalypse has the face of a ghost. Uncontained. Would you be able to trust strangers when the whole world has been plunged into chaos? Uncontained is a dark, post-apocalyptic thriller that takes place in snowy forests cut off from civilization. After a mysterious catastrophe that transforms humans into brutal beasts, former teacher Dan seeks refuge and comes across 2 children, Brooke and Jack, living alone in a wooden shack. Their meeting becomes the beginning of a difficult partnership, full of suspicion, emotions, and attempts to save humanity. In the background lurks another threat, a brutal militiaman who will not hesitate to sacrifice others in the name of his own goals. Uncontained is a story of survival, guilt, and the need for closeness in a world where everything else has already collapsed. Nazi zombies. If you think zombies are just slow corpses with decaying faces, this film will quickly knock that out of your head. Nazi Zombies takes us to the middle of hell on Earth, where a group of friends accidentally end up in an abandoned World War II complex. Unaware of the danger, they set in motion something that has been waiting in the dark for decades, an experimental army of dead soldiers brought to life by Nazi scientists. Now these super soldiers are back in service, and their only goal is to exterminate everything that lives. The film combines a post-apocalyptic atmosphere, relentless action, and the brutality of classic gore horror films, all laced with a suffocating, claustrophobic atmosphere and scenes that stay in your head for a long time. This is no ordinary zombie movie. It's a bloody struggle for survival in a world where history really comes alive. Lisik, Origin Point. If human anger, grief, and despair could take physical form, would you be willing to face them? Lisik, Origin Point is a dark story about what happens when emotions get out of control. In a certain school, things begin to happen that cannot be logically explained. Students, under the influence of trauma and pain, turn into dangerous supernatural beings. At the center of events is Kara, a girl with a painful past, who begins to suspect that these transformations are not accidental. Everything points to a secret experiment to heal trauma. But something went very, very wrong. Now Kara must uncover the truth and stop the escalation of violence before the whole world becomes a battleground between what is human and what is monstrous. Forgive us all. What would happen if all the rules suddenly disappeared and people were forced to look the truth in the eye, the darkest one? Forgive us. All is a dramatic thriller that takes us to a world in moral chaos. After a mysterious global event triggers people's compulsion to confess their worst sins, society begins to crumble. As every concealed secret rises to the surface, relationships cease to make sense, and violence takes a turn for the worse. The main character, a single mother, tries to protect her children from the truth about herself and a world that has stopped pretending to be good. Can forgiveness be earned at a time when no one believes in redemption anymore? 28 years later. You may think it's hard to see something new after so many zombie movies, but 28 years later from 2025 will surprise you with its brutality and intensity. The story is set nearly 3 decades after the first wave of the epidemic that destroyed civilization. On the isolated island of Lindisfarne lives a group of survivors, including the pregnant Ela, her husband, and their son, who are trying to survive in a world overwhelmed by ruins and danger. When the father and son leave the island to explore the mainland, they discover that the world beyond their safe haven is even more hostile and filled with terrifying secrets. The film not only continues the iconic series, but also explores themes of loneliness, survival, and the limits of humanity in a world still struggling to be reborn. Here comes the final film. And trust me, this one's no ordinary ending. It's a full-on blast that hits harder than most Netflix hits, and no one's talking about it. Yet. Before we drop it, leave a comment. Which film hit you hardest? And if you're into raw, underrated apocalypse stories, subscribe. Now get ready. This last film will leave a mark. Silent Zone. What if silence was more terrifying than screaming? Silent Zone takes us to a grim reality after a mysterious outbreak that decimated the population. The cities have fallen silent, and among the ruins are creatures, formerly humans, mutated into monsters that hunt without hesitation. At the center of this apocalyptic tale is Abigail, a lonely girl who meets an ex-cop Cassius. Their journey is not only a fight for life, but also a test of humanity. When a pregnant woman and her husband join their group, tensions rise, and any decision could cost them everything. In a world where breathing can betray your position and ferals hear better than they see, survival depends on silence. This film is not only chilling, but also raises questions. How much are you willing to sacrifice to keep your soul?